Marcus Wellington smiled as he walked out of the City Hall building. The meeting had gone better than he expected. The city council members had all agreed to his company's plan. $50 million would go into making the downtown area better. New jobs would be created. Old buildings would be fixed. It was a good day. He loosened his tie as he walked to his car. The afternoon sun felt warm on his face. Marcus had worked hard to get to this point in his life. He started his technology company 10 years ago in a small garage. Now Wellington Technologies had offices in 5 cities and employed over 300 people. He was proud of what he had built. Marcus got into his black Mercedes S-Class and started the engine. The leather seats were cool and comfortable. He turned on some jazz music and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home would take about 20 minutes. He decided to take the route through Riverside Heights. It was a beautiful neighborhood with large trees and nice houses. As he drove, Marcus thought about his next project. His company was working on new software that would help schools teach children better. He had a meeting with the school board next week. His mind was busy with plans and ideas. Marcus checked his speed. He was going exactly 30 miles per hour, the speed limit for this area. He always drove carefully. His father had taught him that years ago. When you're a black man driving a nice car, his father had said, you have to be extra careful. Some people will look for any reason to stop you. Marcus hated that his father was right, but he had learned to accept it. He always kept his car clean. His registration was always up to date. He never broke traffic laws. He did everything right. At exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Marcus saw the flashing red and blue lights behind him. His heart sank a little. He looked at his speedometer again. 30 miles per hour. He had not been speeding. He thought back over the last few minutes. He had used his turn signal. He had stopped completely at the stop sign. He had not done anything wrong. Marcus turned on his signal and slowly pulled over to the side of the road. He put the car in park and turned off the engine. Then he placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. This was another thing his father had taught him. Keep your hands where they can see them, his father had said. Don't make any sudden moves. Stay calm. In his side mirror, Marcus watched the police car stop behind him. He saw 2 officers inside. The driver got out first. He was a white man, maybe in his late 30s, with short brown hair. He walked toward Marcus's car with his hand resting on his gun. The other officer, a woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, stayed in the passenger seat for a moment before getting out. The male officer walked up to Marcus's window with heavy steps. His face looked angry already, though Marcus had not even spoken yet. Marcus rolled down his window and waited. He kept his hands on the wheel. Whose car is this? The officer demanded. His voice was rough and unfriendly. He did not say hello. He did not ask for license and registration. He just wanted to know whose car it was. Marcus felt a familiar frustration rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm and polite. Good afternoon, officer. This is my car. Is there a problem? The officer's eyes narrowed. He looked at Marcus, then at the expensive car, then back at Marcus. Your car? This is your car? Yes, sir, Marcus replied. Is there a reason you pulled me over? The officer ignored the question. License and registration, now. Marcus slowly reached toward the glove box. I'm reaching for my registration, he said clearly. He had learned to announce every movement. He pulled out the registration papers and his insurance card. Then he carefully reached for his wallet in his jacket pocket. I'm getting my license from my wallet, he said. He handed everything to the officer through the window. The officer took the documents and studied them for a long time. Too long. Marcus knew the officer was looking for something wrong. Any little thing he could use. Marcus Wellington. The officer read out loud. He looked at the address on the license. Then he looked at the registration. This doesn't look right, he said. I'm sorry, Marcus said.
What doesn't look right?
This registration. It looks fake. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The registration was completely real. He had just renewed it 2 months ago. I can assure you, officer, everything is legitimate. I renewed that registration at the DMV in January. The officer's partner had walked up now. She stood a few feet back watching. Marcus noticed she looked uncomfortable. Her eyes moved between her partner and Marcus. Step out of the vehicle, the officer commanded. Can you please tell me why you pulled me over? Marcus asked. He tried to keep his voice steady. Step out of the vehicle now. The officer's hand moved closer to his gun. Marcus took a slow breath. He did not want this situation to get worse. I'm opening the door now, he announced. He opened the door slowly and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The officer pointed to the front of the car. Hands on the hood. Officer, I haven't done anything wrong, Marcus said, but he placed his hands on the hood of his car anyway. The metal was warm from the sun. The officer began to pat him down, checking his pockets. What are you doing in this neighborhood? He asked. I live 2 miles from here, Marcus answered. I'm driving home from a meeting at City Hall. The officer laughed. It was not a friendly laugh. City Hall? Sure you were. What were you really doing? Looking at houses to rob? Marcus closed his eyes for a second. He could not believe what he was hearing. I was at a city council meeting. I'm the CEO of Wellington Technologies. We just announced a $50 million investment in the downtown area. You can call City Hall and verify this. CEO? The officer laughed again. Right, and I'm the mayor. You probably stole this car from one of these houses around here. The female officer spoke up. Derek, maybe we should just run his information. Everything looks legitimate to me. The officer named Derek shot her an angry look. I'll decide what looks legitimate, Santos. Officer Santos looked down at her feet. She did not say anything else, but Marcus could see she was not happy. Derek walked back to his patrol car to run Marcus's information. Marcus stood by his car, feeling embarrassed and angry. A few people had come out of their houses to watch. An older white woman stood on her porch across the street. A man walking his dog had stopped to stare. Marcus had been through situations like this before, but it never got easier. He had done everything right. He followed all the laws. He was successful and respected in his community. But none of that mattered to this officer. All the officer saw was a black man in an expensive car. Derek came back from the patrol car. He radioed for backup. Marcus heard him say, I've got a suspicious person here in a potentially stolen vehicle. Need another unit. The car isn't stolen, Marcus said firmly. You know that because you just ran the plates. Sit down on the curb, Derek ordered. Excuse me? Sit on the curb now. Marcus looked at Officer Santos. She would not meet his eyes. He looked at the people watching from their houses. Then he slowly sat down on the concrete curb. The CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, sitting on a curb like a criminal. Within 5 minutes, 2 more patrol cars arrived. Marcus sat on the hard curb and watched as 2 more police cars pulled up. 4 officers now surrounded him and his car. He felt like a criminal, even though he had done absolutely nothing wrong. The spring afternoon that had started so well was turning into a nightmare. Officer Derek Hutchins talked to the newly arrived officers. Marcus could hear some of their conversation. Derek was telling them about the suspicious person he had found driving an expensive car. He made it sound like Marcus was dangerous. The other officers kept looking over at Marcus with curious eyes. One of the new officers, a young man who looked barely old enough to be out of the police academy, walked over to Marcus. Do you have any weapons on you? He asked. No, Marcus said. I already told Officer Hutchins that. He already searched me. The young officer nodded and walked back to the group. Marcus noticed that this officer seemed nervous. He kept touching his gun belt and shifting his weight from foot to foot. Officer Santos stood apart from the group of men. She kept glancing at Marcus, then looking away. Marcus could tell she knew this was wrong, but she was not doing anything to stop it. He understood her position was difficult, but he wished she would speak up. Derek walked over to Marcus's Mercedes and opened the driver's door. I'm going to search the vehicle, he announced. Do you have probable cause for that? Marcus asked. He knew his rights. I haven't committed any crime. You pulled me over for no reason and now you want to search my car. I have probable cause because this vehicle might be stolen, Derek said. You already ran the plates, Marcus replied, his voice getting firmer. You know it's not stolen. The car is registered to me. Everything is legal. Derek ignored him and began searching through the car. He opened the glove box and pulled everything out. Papers fell onto the seat and floor. He looked under the seats. He opened the center console and dumped the contents onto the passenger seat. Marcus watched his car being torn apart. This is unnecessary, Marcus said loudly. I want to speak to your supervisor. Derek straightened up from the car. You'll speak to whoever I say you can speak to. Right now, you sit there and be quiet." Marcus felt his anger rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting emotional would only make things worse. He had seen too many videos of black men getting hurt or killed during traffic stops. He would not become another statistic. "Where did you get the money for a car like this?" Derek asked, walking back over to Marcus. "I own a technology company," Marcus answered. "I already told you that." "A technology company," Derek repeated with a smirk. "What, you fix computers or something?" "No, I create software. Wellington Technologies. We have offices in 5 cities. Derek laughed and looked at the other officers. "You hear that? He owns a company." The other officers did not laugh with him. They looked uncomfortable. Officer Santos finally spoke up again. "Derek, I really think we should verify his story. He seems legitimate. We've been here for almost 30 minutes and we haven't found anything wrong." Derek turned on her, his face red with anger. "When I want your opinion, Santos, I'll ask for it. Until then, keep your mouth shut." Santos's face flushed. She bit her lip and looked away. But Marcus saw something change in her expression. She was angry now, too. A black SUV drove slowly past the scene. The driver, an elderly black man, shook his head sadly as he looked at Marcus sitting on the curb. Marcus wondered how many times that man had seen something like this in his life. How many times had he experienced it himself? Derek bent down close to Marcus. Too close. Marcus could smell coffee on his breath. "Tell me the truth now," Derek said quietly. "Whose car did you really steal? If you tell me now, things will be easier for you." Marcus looked directly into Derek's eyes. "I did not steal anything. That is my car. I bought it with money I earned from my company. I have done nothing illegal." "You are violating my rights." Derek stood up fast. "Violating your rights?" "I'm doing my job. I'm keeping this neighborhood safe from people like you." "People like me?" Marcus repeated. "What does that mean exactly?" Derek did not answer. He did not have to. Both men knew exactly what he meant. One of the other officers, an older man with gray hair, pulled Derek aside. Marcus could not hear what they were saying, but he could see the older officer was not happy. He kept pointing at Marcus and then at the car. He seemed to be asking Derek questions. Derek's face got redder as he answered. Officer Santos walked over to the older officer. "Sir, I think we need to call the captain," she said quietly. But Marcus heard her. "This has gone too far." "I'm handling this, Santos," Derek snapped at her. The older officer held up his hand. "Actually, Derek, I think Officer Santos might be right. This gentleman has been cooperative. His documents are all in order. We've been here for 30 minutes and we haven't found any reason to hold him. Maybe we should let the captain make the call." "I don't need the captain to tell me how to do my job," Derek said. Marcus decided to speak up again. "I was just at City Hall with Mayor Rachel Foster and the City Council. I announced a $50 million investment in this city. There were reporters there, television cameras. If you call City Hall right now, they will confirm everything I'm saying." Derek walked over and stood above Marcus. "Stop lying. You think I'm stupid? You think I'll believe some story about you meeting with the mayor? It's not a story. It's the truth. Call them. I'm not calling anyone based on your lies." The older officer took out his phone. "I'll call," he said. "What's the harm in verifying?" Derek grabbed the older officer's arm. "Put the phone away, Mitchell. I said I'm handling this." Officer Mitchell pulled his arm free. He was bigger than Derek and looked much stronger. "Don't grab me again," he said in a low voice. Then he stepped away and made the call. Marcus felt a small bit of hope. Finally, someone was willing to check his story. It would all be cleared up soon. He would be free to go home. But Derek was not done. "Stand up," he ordered Marcus. Marcus slowly got to his feet. His legs were stiff from sitting on the concrete. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Marcus's heart started beating faster. "Why, what are you doing?" "I'm detaining you while we investigate." "Investigate what?" "I haven't committed any crime." Derek pulled out his handcuffs. "You're being detained for suspicion of driving a stolen vehicle and providing false information to a police officer." "This is insane," Marcus said. But he put his hands behind his back. He knew fighting would only make everything worse. The metal handcuffs clicked around his wrists. They were tight. Too tight. Marcus felt them cutting into his skin. Officer Santos stepped forward. "Derek, this is wrong. You know this is wrong." "Back off, Santos," Derek warned her. "No," she said. Her voice was shaking but determined. I won't back off. You're violating this man's rights. You've been doing this for months and I've stayed quiet. But not anymore. This man has done nothing wrong and you're treating him like a criminal because of the color of his skin. The other officers stopped what they were doing. Everyone stared at Santos. She had just said out loud what they were all thinking. Derek's face turned dark red. You just earned yourself a write-up, Santos. Maybe even a suspension. I don't care, Santos said. Someone needs to stand up and say this is wrong. Officer Mitchell ended his phone call and walked over to the group. His face was serious. I just spoke to someone at City Hall. They confirmed that Marcus Wellington, CEO of Wellington Technologies, was at a city council meeting this afternoon. He announced a $50 million investment. The mayor was there. The press was there. Everything he said is true. Derek's mouth opened, but no words came out. I also called the captain, Mitchell continued. She's on her way here right now. And Derek, she's not happy. Not happy at all. Marcus felt relief wash over him. Finally, this would be over. The handcuffs still cut into his wrists, but now he knew he would be okay. Derek stood frozen. He seemed to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. Across the street, the elderly woman who had been watching from her porch held up her phone. She had been recording the whole thing. Jennifer Crawford had been enjoying a quiet afternoon on her front porch. At 72 years old, she loved these peaceful moments. She would sit in her comfortable wicker chair, drink her coffee, and watch the neighborhood. She had lived on Maple Street for 45 years. She knew everyone and everything that happened here. Today had been particularly nice. The weather was perfect, not too hot and not too cold. Birds sang in the large oak trees that lined the street. Jennifer had just finished reading the newspaper when she saw the police car pull over the black Mercedes. At first, she did not think much of it. Police stops happen sometimes, but something about this one felt different. The way the officer walked to the car looked aggressive. His body language was all wrong. Jennifer had spent 30 years as a criminal defense attorney before she retired. She knew how to read people, especially police officers. She watched as the officer demanded something from the driver. Even from across the street, she could see the officer was angry. But the driver seemed calm. He handed over his papers without any trouble. So why did the officer look so hostile? Jennifer leaned forward in her chair. Something was not right here. The officer was taking too long to look at the documents. He kept looking at the driver, then at the car, then back at the driver. She recognized that look. It was suspicion based on nothing but prejudice. When the officer ordered the driver out of the car, Jennifer stood up. This was definitely wrong. She walked into her house and grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter. By the time she got back to the porch, the driver was standing with his hands on the hood of his car. Jennifer started recording on her phone. She made sure to hold it steady and capture everything clearly. In her years as a lawyer, she had seen many cases fall apart because of bad evidence. If something wrong was happening here, she wanted clear proof. The driver was a well-dressed black man, probably in his 40s. He wore an expensive suit and tie. He looked like a businessman, not a criminal. But the officer was treating him like he had done something terrible. Jennifer could hear the officer's raised voice even from across the street. Where did you get the money for this car? The officer shouted. Jennifer's blood ran cold. That question had nothing to do with traffic laws. That was pure racism. She kept recording. More police cars arrived. Now 4 officers surrounded one man who was sitting on the curb. It looked ridiculous. It looked like a scene from the bad old days, the days Jennifer thought were behind them. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her neighbor, Tom Bradley. Are you seeing this? The text said. Tom lived 3 houses down. Jennifer looked up and saw him standing in his front yard, also watching the scene. She texted back, recording it. This is wrong. Jennifer thought about the driver sitting on that curb. He reminded her of her own son, Marcus Jr. Her son was also a successful businessman. He also drove a nice car. He also wore expensive suits. And he also got stopped by police far more often than his white friends. She remembered the conversation she had with her son last year. He had been pulled over 3 times in 6 months. Each time he had done nothing wrong. Mom, he had said, I'm afraid every time I see police lights behind me. I'm a 45-year-old man with a master's degree and a good job, but I'm still afraid. Jennifer had cried that night. She had fought so hard during her career for civil rights and equal justice. But here was her own son, still living in fear because of the color of his skin. She watched as one of the officers searched the Mercedes. He pulled everything out and threw it around. The driver protested but stayed calm. Jennifer was impressed by his composure. She would have been screaming by now. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her neighbor, Richard Chen. Richard was on the city council. Jennifer had known him for 15 years. His text said, "Jennifer, I'm getting reports about a police incident on your street. Do you see anything?" Jennifer immediately called him. "Richard, you need to come here right now. There's an officer harassing a black man in front of my house. The man says he just came from City Hall. Do you know anyone named Marcus Wellington?" There was a pause on the phone. Marcus Wellington, the CEO? He was just at our council meeting an hour ago. We just approved his company's $50 million investment proposal. He's one of the most respected businessmen in the city. Well, right now he's sitting on a curb in handcuffs, Jennifer said. And I'm recording the whole thing. Richard swore under his breath. I'm calling the police captain right now. Keep recording, Jennifer. This is important. Jennifer kept her phone camera focused on the scene. She made sure to capture the officer's face clearly. She recorded every word she could hear. She documented the timeline carefully, checking her watch every few minutes. A woman walking her small white dog stopped on the sidewalk. She stood next to Jennifer's fence. "What's happening?" the woman asked. "Police harassment," Jennifer said simply. "Racism." The woman watched for a minute, then shook her head and walked away. She seemed uncomfortable, like she did not want to get involved. Jennifer understood. Not everyone had the courage to stand up against injustice, but she did. She had spent her whole career standing up. She was not going to stop now. Jennifer noticed one of the officers, a woman, seemed upset. The female officer kept trying to talk to the aggressive male officer, but he kept shutting her down. Good, Jennifer thought. At least one of them has a conscience. Another neighbor came out of his house. It was George Patterson, a retired schoolteacher. He walked over to Jennifer's porch. "Jenny, what's going on?" "Police stop," Jennifer said. "But it's wrong." "Very wrong," George watched for a moment. "That man hasn't done anything wrong, has he?" "No, and I'm documenting everything." George pulled out his own phone. "I'll record too." From a different angle. Just in case, Jennifer smiled. This was what community meant. Looking out for each other. Standing up when you saw injustice. More people started coming out of their houses. Jennifer saw at least 6 neighbors watching now. Some of them looked shocked. Others looked sad. One older man, Charles Wright, who was also black, just shook his head slowly. Jennifer wondered how many times he had experienced something like this in his 70 years. She saw the aggressive officer bend down close to the driver and say something. The driver responded calmly, but the officer suddenly looked very angry. He straightened up fast and started yelling. Jennifer checked her phone recording. She had been filming for 25 minutes now. Her arm was getting tired, but she kept the camera steady. This was too important. Her phone buzzed with another text from Richard Chen. "Captain Morrison is on her way." She's furious. "Keep recording everything. This evidence might be crucial." Jennifer texted back, "I've got everything." 25 minutes of footage. She watched as another officer made a phone call. She saw him talking and gesturing. Then he walked over to the aggressive officer and seemed to be giving him news. The aggressive officer's face went pale. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Something had changed. Jennifer could feel it. The tension was different now. The aggressive officer suddenly looked less confident. He looked worried. 2 minutes later, Jennifer saw another police car turning onto Maple Street. But this car was different. It was a captain's car. She recognized it because Captain Patricia Morrison had spoken at a community meeting Jennifer attended last month. The captain's car pulled up behind the other police vehicles. A tall black woman in a police captain's uniform stepped out. She did not look happy. She looked very, very angry. Jennifer kept recording. This was about to get interesting. Captain Morrison surveyed the scene. She saw the driver still in handcuffs. She saw 4 police officers standing around. She saw the Mercedes with all its contents pulled out. And she saw the small crowd of neighbors watching and recording. What exactly is happening here? The captain's voice was sharp and commanding. Jennifer could not hear everything that was said, but she could see body language clearly. The aggressive officer tried to explain something. He gestured at the driver. He pointed at the car, but the captain did not look convinced. Then the driver stood up. Even from across the street, Jennifer could see the moment of recognition on the captain's face. The captain knew who he was. Jennifer stopped recording for a moment and quickly sent the video file to Richard Chen. She included a text, "Sending you the evidence now," just in case. Then she started recording again. She did not want to miss a single moment of what happened next. The captain was now talking to the driver. She seemed to be apologizing. The driver was responding, but he still looked upset. Of course he was upset. He had just been humiliated in front of his neighbors for no reason. The captain turned to the aggressive officer. Even from across the street, Jennifer could see that the conversation was not going well for him. The captain was pointing at different things and asking questions. The officer kept trying to explain, but the captain kept shaking her head. Jennifer's phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard. "Got your video. Thank you, Jennifer. This is exactly what we needed. Justice will be served." Jennifer looked at the scene in front of her. The driver was finally getting out of the handcuffs. The captain had called over all the other officers and seemed to be giving them instructions. The aggressive officer stood alone, looking smaller somehow. Captain Patricia Morrison had been in her office doing paperwork when her phone rang. It was Richard Chen from the city council. She liked Richard. He was fair and reasonable, and he did not call her unless something was really important. "Patricia, we have a problem," Richard had said. "Marcus Wellington is being harassed by one of your officers on Maple Street. A witness is recording everything." Patricia felt her stomach drop. Marcus Wellington. The man who had just sat at her table during the police community relations dinner last month. The man who had donated computers to the police youth program. The man who was about to invest $50 million in their city. She grabbed her keys and ran to her car. On the drive over, she received another call. This time it was Officer Mitchell, one of her most experienced officers. "Captain, you need to get to Maple Street right now. Hutchins has gone too far this time." Patricia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Derek Hutchins. She should have dealt with him months ago. There had been complaints before, whispers about his behavior. But she had not had enough solid evidence. Well, it sounded like she was about to get all the evidence she needed. When she turned onto Maple Street, her anger grew even stronger. 4 police cars for 1 traffic stop. 1 man in handcuffs sitting on a curb, his expensive car torn apart with contents scattered everywhere, and neighbors standing around recording everything with their phones. This was a disaster. This was exactly the kind of incident that destroyed community trust. This was the kind of thing that made the evening news and sparked protests. Patricia parked her car and got out. She took a deep breath to control her anger. As a captain, she needed to be professional. But inside, she was furious. "What exactly is happening here?" she asked loudly. Her voice carried authority. All the officers immediately stood straighter. Derek Hutchins turned around. When he saw her, his face went pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked like a student who had been caught cheating on a test. "Well?" Patricia demanded. "I'm waiting for an explanation." Derek finally found his voice. "Captain, I pulled over this vehicle for suspicious activity." The driver was acting nervous. His documents looked questionable. "I had reason to believe the vehicle might be stolen." Patricia looked at Derek, then at the Mercedes, then at the man sitting on the curb. The man was wearing a suit that probably cost $2,000. He did not look like a car thief. He looked like a businessman. "What documents looked questionable?" Patricia asked. "The registration, ma'am. It just didn't look right." "Did you run the plates?" Derek hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. And what did you find?" Another hesitation. "The vehicle is registered to him. So the car is not stolen?" "Well, no, but what?" Patricia's voice got harder. "The car is legally registered to the driver. So why is he in handcuffs? Why is his car searched? Why are 4 police units here?" Derek had no answer. Patricia walked over to the man on the curb. As she got closer, recognition hit her like a truck. She knew this face. She had sat across from this man and talked about community programs and police relations. She had laughed at his jokes and discussed their shared love of jazz music. "Mr. Wellington," she said. Her voice was much softer now. Marcus looked up at her. His face showed a mix of frustration, anger, and relief. He slowly stood up, his hands still cuffed behind his back. "Captain Morrison," Marcus said. His voice was calm but tight with emotion. We met last month at the police community relations dinner. I believe you were seated at my table. Patricia felt sick to her stomach. She looked back at Derek Hutchins. She saw the exact moment when Derek realized his terrible mistake. All the color drained from his face. Officer Santos, remove Mr. Wellington's handcuffs immediately, Patricia commanded. Officer Santos rushed forward with her keys. I'm so sorry, sir, she whispered to Marcus as she unlocked the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists. The metal had left red marks on his skin. Patricia turned back to Marcus. Mr. Wellington, I apologize deeply for this situation. Can you please tell me exactly what happened? Start from the beginning. Marcus took a breath. He explained how he had been driving home from the city council meeting. He had not been speeding or breaking any laws. Officer Hutchins had pulled him over and immediately asked whose car it was. Marcus had provided all his documents, which were completely legitimate. But Officer Hutchins had accused him of stealing the car and refused to believe anything he said. He searched me, Marcus continued. Then he searched my car without my permission. He accused me of lying about my job and about being at City Hall. He made comments about people like me not belonging in this neighborhood. And then he put me in handcuffs and made me sit on the curb for over 30 minutes. Patricia listened to every word. Her jaw got tighter and tighter. When Marcus finished, she turned to Derek. Is this true? She asked. Derek stammered. I was just doing my job. He looked suspicious. Suspicious? Patricia interrupted. What exactly looked suspicious? Be specific. The car was expensive and he was in this neighborhood. This neighborhood? Patricia's voice rose. You mean a neighborhood where people with money live? And he was driving a car that cost a lot of money? Is that your definition of suspicious? Well, I just thought... No, Patricia said firmly. You didn't think. You saw a black man in an expensive car and made assumptions based on his skin color. That's called racial profiling, Officer Hutchins, and it's illegal. She looked at the other officers. Did any of you try to stop this? Officer Mitchell stepped forward. I questioned his actions, Captain. And Officer Santos spoke up several times. Patricia looked at Officer Santos. The young woman looked nervous but determined. I told him multiple times that Mr. Wellington's documents were legitimate and that we should verify his story. He refused to listen. And this is not the first time I've witnessed him engage in this kind of behavior. Patricia's eyes widened. What do you mean, not the first time? Santos took a deep breath. I've been documenting incidents for 6 months. I have notes on 3 other traffic stops where Officer Hutchins showed clear bias. I was planning to come to you with my concerns, but I was afraid. I should have come sooner. I'm sorry. Do you have these notes with you? In my patrol car, ma'am. Get them, now. While Santos went to get her notes, Patricia looked at the small crowd of neighbors still watching. She walked over to the elderly white woman who was standing on her porch. Excuse me, ma'am. Did you see what happened here? Jennifer Crawford nodded. I saw everything, Captain, and I recorded it. 43 minutes of video. I'm Jennifer Crawford, retired attorney. I know evidence when I see it. Patricia felt a small sense of relief. At least there would be clear documentation. Would you be willing to share that video with the department? I already sent it to Richard Chen at City Hall, Jennifer said. But I'll gladly provide a copy to you as well. That man did nothing wrong, and your officer treated him terribly. Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. I'll send someone to collect your statement and the video. Patricia walked back to where Marcus stood. Mr. Wellington, I cannot express how sorry I am about this incident. This is not what our department stands for. This is not how we train our officers. But it is how some of your officers behave, Marcus said quietly. This is not my first time being pulled over for no reason, Captain. But this is the worst it's ever been. Before Patricia could respond, another car pulled up. A black sedan with official city plates. Mayor Rachel Foster got out of the car. She looked at the scene and her face showed shock and anger. Marcus? The mayor called out. What in the world is going on here? Marcus turned to the mayor. Hello, Mayor Foster. I'm afraid I've had a difficult afternoon. The mayor walked over quickly. She looked at Patricia. Captain Morrison explained this to me. I was just at a meeting with this man an hour ago. He announced a $50 million investment in our city. Why is he standing on a street corner surrounded by police officers? Patricia explained the situation as professionally as she could. With each sentence, the mayor's face grew darker with anger. Officer Hutchins, the mayor said, walking over to Derek. Did you pull over Mr. Wellington because he's a black man driving an expensive car? Derek looked at the ground. I was just doing my job, ma'am. That's not what I asked. Did you racially profile this man? Derek said nothing. The mayor turned to Patricia. Captain, I want a full investigation. I want it started today, and I want a report on my desk by the end of the week. Yes, ma'am, Patricia said. She had already decided what needed to happen next. She walked over to Derek Hutchins. Officer Santos had returned with her notebook and handed it to Patricia. Patricia flipped through the pages quickly. Each entry described a traffic stop of a black or Latino driver. Each entry noted Derek's behavior and comments. Each entry showed a clear pattern. Patricia looked at Derek. Officer Hutchins, as of this moment, you are suspended pending a full investigation. I need your badge and your weapon. Derek's eyes went wide. Captain, please, your badge and weapon now. With shaking hands, Derek unpinned his badge and handed it over. He unholstered his gun and gave that to Patricia as well. Officer Mitchell will drive you back to the station, Patricia continued. You will make a full statement. You will cooperate completely with the investigation. Do you understand? Derek nodded silently. He looked like he might cry. Patricia turned to Marcus. Mr. Wellington, you are free to go. Again, I deeply apologize. Someone will contact you tomorrow to take your official statement. And if you choose to file a formal complaint, the department will support that process fully. Marcus looked at his car. The contents were still scattered all over the seats. Can someone help me clean up my vehicle? Of course. Patricia called over 2 officers who quickly started putting everything back in place. The next morning, Captain Patricia Morrison arrived at the police station before sunrise. She had barely slept. The events of the previous day played over and over in her mind. A respected businessman humiliated, a community's trust damaged, and one of her officers revealed as a racist who had been hiding in plain sight. She made herself a strong cup of coffee and sat at her desk. The video from Jennifer Crawford was already loaded on her computer. She had watched it 3 times last night. Now she needed to watch it again with fresh eyes. Patricia pressed play. The video was clear and steady. Jennifer had done an excellent job of capturing everything. Patricia watched as Derek Hutchins approached Marcus Wellington's car with aggression in every step. She watched as he immediately questioned whether Marcus owned the vehicle. She heard every disrespectful word, every baseless accusation. The worst part was watching Marcus remain calm and polite while being treated like a criminal. He answered every question. He provided every document. He explained who he was and where he had been. And Derek had ignored all of it. Patricia paused the video when Derek made Marcus sit on the curb. The image showed a successful businessman in an expensive suit, sitting on concrete like a prisoner. It was humiliating and completely unnecessary. There was a knock on her office door. Come in, Patricia called. Officer Maria Santos entered. She looked tired too. Good morning, Captain. You wanted to see me? Yes, have a seat. Patricia closed her laptop. I've been reviewing your notes from the past 6 months. These are detailed and well documented. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Santos looked down at her hands. I was afraid, ma'am. Derek is friends with several senior officers. I thought if I reported him, I would be labeled as a troublemaker. I thought it might hurt my career. Patricia nodded. She understood that fear. Police departments often had a code of silence. Officers who spoke up against other officers sometimes faced retaliation. But that culture needed to change. Officer Santos, what you did yesterday took courage. You spoke up when it mattered most, and these notes you kept will be crucial evidence. I want you to know that you did the right thing. Santos looked up, relief clear on her face. Thank you, Captain. I'm also creating a new position in the department. We need an accountability officer, someone who will handle complaints and investigate potential misconduct. I want you to apply for that position. Santos's eyes widened. Really? You would trust me with that? You've already proven that you're willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. That's exactly what we need in that role. After Santos left, Patricia spent the next 3 hours reviewing Derek Hutchins's entire file. She pulled every traffic stop he had made in the past 2 years. She looked at the data and a clear pattern emerged. In 2 years, Derek had made 147 traffic stops. Of those, 112 were of black or Latino drivers. Only 35 were of white drivers. In a city where the population was 60% white, The numbers did not add up. Patricia dug deeper. She found that Derek wrote tickets to white drivers about 30% of the time. But he wrote tickets to black and Latino drivers 75% of the time. And the searches were even more telling. He had searched the vehicles of 68 black and Latino drivers but only 5 white drivers. The evidence was overwhelming. Derek Hutchins had been racially profiling drivers for years, and somehow it had gone unnoticed. Or maybe people had noticed but stayed quiet. Either way, it was unacceptable. At 10 o'clock, Patricia called Derek into her office. He arrived with a lawyer from the police union. Patricia had expected that. "Officer Hutchins, I've completed my preliminary review of the incident yesterday," Patricia began. "I've also reviewed your entire file for the past 2 years. What I've found is deeply troubling." Derek's lawyer leaned forward. "My client was simply doing his job. He made a judgment call based on his training and experience." Patricia slid a folder across her desk. "This folder contains statistics on every traffic stop your client has made in 2 years. The numbers show a clear pattern of racial profiling. I also have video evidence from yesterday, a detailed statement from Mr. Wellington, witness testimony from multiple neighbors, and documented complaints from Officer Santos about previous incidents." She paused and looked directly at Derek. "You violated department policy, state law, and federal civil rights protections. You racially profiled a citizen. You detained him without probable cause. You searched his vehicle without legal justification, and you made it clear through your words and actions that you stopped him because of his race." Derek finally spoke. His voice was small. "I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Patricia's voice rose. "A mistake is writing down the wrong address. What you did was systematic discrimination. And according to Officer Santos's notes, this was not the first time." The lawyer tried to intervene again. "Now, Captain, let's not rush to judgment." "I'm not rushing to anything," Patricia interrupted. "I've spent 12 hours reviewing evidence. I've consulted with the city attorney and with internal affairs. The evidence is clear and overwhelming." She pulled out another document. "This is a notice of termination. Effective immediately. Derek Hutchins is no longer employed by this police department. The charges include racial profiling, unlawful detention, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming an officer." Derek's face went white. "You can't fire me. I have rights." The union has already been notified," Patricia said. "They can appeal if they choose, but the evidence is very clear. You violated multiple policies and laws. Your employment is terminated." The lawyer stood up. "We'll fight this." "That's your right," Patricia said. "But I'm confident in my decision. Mr. Wellington has also indicated he may file a civil rights lawsuit. That's his right as well." After Derek and his lawyer left, Patricia sat back in her chair. Firing an officer was never easy, even when it was clearly the right thing to do. But she felt certain about this decision. Her phone rang. It was Mayor Rachel Foster. "Patricia, I just got off the phone with Marcus Wellington," the mayor said. "He's agreed not to talk to the media right now. He wants to give us time to handle this internally. But he's made some requests." "What kind of requests?" "He wants meaningful reform. He wants bias training for all officers. He wants a community oversight committee. And he wants better reporting mechanisms so officers like Santos feel safe coming forward with complaints." Patricia smiled. "Those are all things I was already planning to propose. Mr. Wellington is being very reasonable." "He's a good man," the mayor said. "And he cares about this city." "But Patricia, we can't let something like this happen again. We got lucky that Marcus is handling this with grace. Another person might have already called the media and started protests." "I know, Mayor. I'm already working on new policies and training programs." "Good. And Patricia, I know firing Hutchins was difficult, but it was the right call. Thank you for acting quickly." After the call ended, Patricia walked down to the department conference room. She had called a mandatory meeting for all patrol officers. They needed to hear about what happened and what it meant for the department going forward. 50 officers filled the room. Patricia stood at the front and told them the whole story. She did not hide any details. She showed them parts of the video. She explained Derek's termination, and then she told them what would change. "Starting next week, every officer in this department will undergo 8 hours of bias training," Patricia announced. "We will also implement new policies on traffic stops. Every stop must be documented with clear probable cause. We will be collecting data on all stops to identify any patterns of discrimination. And we are creating a new accountability office where officers can report concerns without fear of retaliation. She looked around the room. Some officers looked uncomfortable. Others looked relieved. A few looked angry. I know some of you might think these changes are unnecessary, Patricia continued. You might think Derek was just one bad officer. But the truth is that Derek was able to operate the way he did for 2 years because our systems failed. We failed to notice his pattern of behavior. We failed to create an environment where officers like Santos felt safe speaking up. We failed Marcus Wellington and probably dozens of other citizens. She paused for emphasis. That failure ends now. We are supposed to protect and serve everyone in this community, not just the people who look like us, not just the people we're comfortable with, everyone. And if you can't do that, if you can't treat every person with dignity and respect regardless of their race, then you should not be wearing this uniform. The room was silent. Patricia could see that her message was hitting home. Officer Mitchell raised his hand. Captain, I was there yesterday. I should have stepped in sooner. I knew what Derek was doing was wrong, but I hesitated. I'm sorry for that, Patricia nodded. I appreciate your honesty, Officer Mitchell. And you're right. You should have stepped in sooner. But you did eventually speak up. You made the call that brought me to the scene. Learn from this and do better next time. Another officer raised her hand. What about Officer Santos? What's going to happen to her? Officer Santos is being recognized for her courage, Patricia said. She documented concerns over 6 months and she spoke up yesterday when it mattered most. She's exactly the kind of officer we need in this department. Patricia looked around the room one more time. Change is coming to this department. Some of you will embrace it. Some of you will resist it. But it's happening whether you like it or not. We owe it to our community. We owe it to people like Marcus Wellington, who deserve to drive through their own neighborhood without fear. And we owe it to ourselves to be better. The meeting ended and officers filed out quietly. Patricia returned to her office and made one more phone call. Mr. Wellington, this is Captain Morrison. I wanted to update you personally. Officer Hutchins has been terminated effective immediately. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus Wellington sat in his office looking out the window. The city spread before him, busy with afternoon traffic and people going about their lives. On his desk was a letter from the police department. It contained a formal apology and the results of the investigation into Officer Derek Hutchins. The investigation had been thorough and fast. Derek had been fired after they found he had racially profiled drivers for 2 years. The report detailed 112 traffic stops of Black and Latino drivers, compared to only 35 stops of white drivers. The numbers told a clear story of discrimination, but Marcus was not interested in revenge. He was interested in change. His assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Wellington, Mayor Foster is here for your meeting. Marcus stood up and smiled. Send her in. Mayor Rachel Foster walked in carrying a folder and looking determined. Over the past 2 weeks, she and Marcus had talked almost every day. They were working together on something important. Marcus, I have good news, the mayor said, sitting down across from his desk. The city council approved your proposal this morning. All of it. Marcus felt relief wash over him. All of it? The training program, the oversight committee, everything. Everything. They voted 8-1 in favor. We're moving forward with comprehensive police reform. Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up the document they had created together. It was a detailed plan for changing how the police department worked. The plan included mandatory bias training for every officer, not just one day, but ongoing training every quarter. Officers would learn about their own unconscious biases and how to recognize them. They would practice de-escalation techniques. They would hear from community members about their experiences. The plan also created a civilian oversight committee. This committee would review complaints against police officers. It would include people from different backgrounds and neighborhoods. It would have real power to investigate and recommend discipline. Most importantly, the plan established a new reporting system. Officers like Maria Santos would be able to report concerns about other officers without fear of retaliation. There would be protections for whistleblowers and rewards for those who spoke up about wrongdoing. There's more, the mayor said. She pulled out another document. The police department is implementing new requirements for traffic stops. Officers must document the reason for every stop before they approach the vehicle. They must record all interactions, And all the data will be collected and analyzed quarterly to identify any patterns of racial profiling. Marcus nodded. This is good. This is real change. And it's because of you, the mayor said. You could have handled this differently. You could have sued the city. You could have gone to the media and made us look terrible. But instead, you worked with us to create solutions. I don't want money, Marcus said quietly. I want my nephew to be able to drive through any neighborhood without fear. I want my employees to feel safe when they see police officers. I want change that lasts. The mayor stood up and extended her hand. You're a good man, Marcus Wellington. This city is lucky to have you. After the mayor left, Marcus made a phone call to his bank. He had one more thing to do. 3 days later, Marcus stood at a podium in the community center. The room was full of people. Police officers sat in the front rows. Behind them were community members, business owners, teachers, and activists. Local news cameras lined the back wall. Captain Patricia Morrison stood beside him. She had asked him to speak at this event, the launch of the new community policing initiative. Marcus looked out at the crowd and began to speak. 2 weeks ago, I had an experience that no person should have to go through. I was pulled over for no reason. I was treated like a criminal even though I had done nothing wrong. I was humiliated in front of my neighbors, all because of the color of my skin. The room was completely silent. Everyone listened to every word. I could be angry, Marcus continued. I have every right to be angry. But anger alone does not create change. What creates change is action. What creates change is people working together toward a common goal. He gestured to Captain Morrison. Captain Morrison acted quickly and decisively. She fired an officer who violated his oath and the public trust. But more than that, she committed to real reform. She admitted that the system had failed and she promised to fix it. Marcus pulled out a large check from his jacket. Today, I am donating $500,000 to establish a community policing initiative. This money will fund programs that bring police officers and community members together. It will support training programs. It will help create the oversight committee, and it will ensure that what happened to me does not happen to anyone else. The crowd burst into applause. Marcus waited for them to quiet down before continuing. But this is not just about money. This is about all of us committing to change. Officers, I ask you to examine your own biases. We all have them. The question is whether we acknowledge them and work to overcome them. I ask you to speak up when you see wrongdoing like Officer Santos did. She showed tremendous courage and she should be an example to all of you. Marcus saw Maria Santos in the third row. She looked proud and emotional. To the community members here today, I ask you to engage with your police department. Attend the community meetings. Join the oversight committee. Let your voice be heard. Change requires participation from everyone. He paused and looked around the room again. What happened to me was wrong. But out of that wrong, we have an opportunity to create something right. We have an opportunity to build trust. We have an opportunity to create a model that other cities can follow. Marcus stepped back from the podium. The applause was thunderous. People stood up. Some were crying. Others were smiling. It felt like a turning point. After the event, Marcus shook hands with dozens of people. An elderly black man came up to him with tears in his eyes. Thank you, son, the man said. I've been pulled over more times than I can count. Maybe now things will be different for my grandchildren. A young police officer who looked barely 25 approached nervously. Mr. Wellington, I just graduated from the academy 2 months ago. I promise you that I will be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Marcus shook his hand. That's all I can ask. Be the officer you would want to encounter if you were pulled over. Jennifer Crawford, the woman who had recorded the incident, came over with her neighbor, Richard Chen. Marcus, you've turned something terrible into something beautiful, Jennifer said. I'm proud to have played a small part in this. Mrs. Crawford, your video was crucial, Marcus told her. Without that evidence, this might have been swept under the rug. You're a hero. Jennifer blushed. I just did what was right. 6 months passed. The changes took hold slowly but surely. Every officer in the department completed the bias training. The feedback was mixed at first. Some officers resisted. They thought it was unnecessary or politically motivated. But others had breakthrough moments where they recognized their own biases and committed to doing better. The Civilian Oversight Committee held its first meeting. 10 community members from diverse backgrounds reviewed complaint procedures and made recommendations. For the first time, Community voices had real power in police accountability. Maria Santos was promoted to head the new accountability office. She received 53 complaints in the first 3 months. She investigated each one fairly and thoroughly. Some complaints were found to be baseless. Others resulted in discipline or additional training. But every complaint was taken seriously, and every person who filed a complaint received a response. The data collection system revealed important patterns. The department discovered that officers in certain neighborhoods were more likely to make pretextual stops. They identified times of day when stops were more frequent. They used this data to adjust patrol patterns and provide targeted training. Most importantly, the relationship between police and community began to improve. Officers attended block parties and community events. They coached youth sports teams. They became part of the neighborhoods they served instead of occupiers of those neighborhoods. Marcus continued his work with Wellington Technologies, but he also became an advocate for police reform nationwide. He spoke at conferences and wrote articles. He shared the story of what happened to him and how the city responded. Other cities reached out to learn from their model. Derek Hutchins tried to appeal his termination, but the appeal was denied. The evidence against him was too strong. He eventually moved to another state. Marcus heard that Derek took a job in security for a private company. Marcus hoped that Derek had learned something from the experience, but he honestly did not know. 1 year after the incident, Marcus received an invitation. The police academy was graduating a new class of officers, and they wanted him to speak at the ceremony. Marcus stood before 50 new officers in their crisp uniforms. They looked young and eager. He wondered how many of them would remember this moment when they faced difficult situations on the street. 1 year ago today, Marcus began, I was pulled over by Officer Derek Hutchins. He saw a black man in an expensive car and assumed I was a criminal. He violated my rights, he humiliated me, and ultimately he lost his career because of his prejudice and poor judgment. The young officers listened intently. I tell you this story not to make you afraid of making mistakes. I tell you this story to make you think about the power you hold. When you put on that uniform, you have tremendous authority over people's lives. You can make someone's day better or worse. You can protect or you can harm. You can build trust or destroy it. Marcus walked along the front row, making eye contact with individual officers. Some of you in this room will face situations where your biases are challenged. You will pull over someone who does not fit your expectations of who belongs in a certain neighborhood or driving a certain car. In those moments, I challenge you to pause. Ask yourself why you are making this stop. Ask yourself if you would make the same stop if the driver looked different. He returned to the center of the stage. Officer Maria Santos was on the scene that day. She knew what was happening was wrong. And despite the risk to her career, she spoke up. She documented the incident. She stood up for what was right. Today, she runs the accountability office, and she is making this department better every day. Be like Officer Santos. Have the courage to speak up when you see wrongdoing. Marcus pulled out a photo and held it up. It was a picture of him sitting on the curb in handcuffs. The image was powerful and painful. This should never happen to anyone. Not because of their race, their religion, their background, or any other factor that has nothing to do with actual criminal behavior. You are here to serve and protect everyone. Not just the people who look like you. Not just the people you are comfortable with, everyone. He put the photo away and smiled. But I also want to tell you about the good that came from that terrible day. Because of that incident, this department implemented comprehensive reforms. Because of that incident, we created an oversight committee that gives community members a real voice. Because of that incident, officers now receive ongoing bias training. And because of that incident, the relationship between police and community in this city is stronger than it has been in decades. Marcus's voice grew stronger with emotion. So as you graduate today and begin your careers, I ask you to be agents of change. Be officers who build bridges instead of walls. Be officers who listen instead of just enforce. Be officers who see every person as a human being deserving of dignity and respect. If you can do that, you will not only have a successful career, you will make this world a better place. The graduating officers stood and applauded. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Captain Morrison, who stood at the side of the stage, nodded at Marcus with respect and gratitude. After the ceremony, a young black officer approached Marcus. Mr. Wellington, my name is James Thompson. I grew up in this city. I've been pulled over 5 times in my life and only once did I actually do something wrong. I became an officer because I want to be the change. I want to be different. Thank you for what you did. Marcus shook his hand firmly. Officer Thompson, the fact that you recognize the problem means you are already part of the solution. Good luck to you. As Marcus drove home that evening, he passed through Riverside Heights, the neighborhood where he had been pulled over a year ago. He drove his Mercedes at exactly the speed limit. But this time he did not feel the same anxiety he used to feel. He passed Jennifer Crawford's house. She was sitting on her porch as usual. She waved at him and he waved back. He passed the spot where he had been forced to sit on the curb. The memory was still painful, but it no longer felt like just a terrible experience. It felt like the beginning of something important. Marcus thought about his nephew, who was learning to drive. He thought about all the young black men and women who would get their licenses in the coming years. He hoped that because of the changes they had made, those young people would have fewer frightening encounters with police. He hoped they would feel safer. He hoped they would see police officers as protectors instead of threats. Change was slow. Marcus knew that. One city could not fix centuries of systemic racism. One initiative could not eliminate all bias. But it was a start. It was progress, and progress, even small progress, was worth celebrating. As he pulled into his driveway, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a text from Captain Morrison. Thank you for speaking today. Your words meant a lot to our new officers. Together we are building something better. Marcus smiled and texted back. Together is the only way it works. Thank you for being a partner in this work. He got out of his car and walked into his house. His wife met him at the door. How did it go? She asked. It went well, Marcus said, hugging her. I think we are making a real difference, and they were. Not just for Marcus, but for everyone who had ever been profiled. Everyone who had ever been treated unfairly. Everyone who had ever felt afraid during a simple traffic stop. The work would continue. The fight for justice and equality would go on. But today, in this city, because one man refused to let anger consume him and instead chose to build bridges, things were better. And that was enough. For now, that was enough.